This is exercise 1, part 3. When we left off, we were creating some HTML elements to control text formatting. Another tag that's useful for formatting text is something that can come whenever you are writing an article and you may decide to quote another author or another source. We can format the text to indicate this using a tag known as block quote. So if I refresh this, you can see that what the block quote does is it creates additional space around it and indents. And this is oftentimes seen in publications when an author is quoting someone or pulling from another source article. So that can be useful. We also have the ability to create lists. And the first type of list we're going to look at is whenever we want to make a list of items in no particular order, we can create something called an unordered list. We create an unordered list using the UL element, which has an opening and closing UL tag like so. And inside we must always place list items. So to separate each item, to show separate items within the list, we use the li element, which has an opening and closing li tag. For example, if we wanted to make a list of fruit, I can add each fruit inside of its own list item tags. So we'll say apples, oranges, peaches, pears, and bananas. Okay, so if I save and refresh, we can see here if I look in the browser that it did in fact create a bullet point separated list of items. So here we have apples, oranges, peaches, pears, and bananas. By default, the browser is adding a solid circular bullet point to each of these, and it's indenting them as well. Now additionally, we can also make sublists within a list. So for example, let's say that I wanted to make a sublist under pears of all the different types of pears. So what I can do is I can go after the list item here, pears, after the word pears, and before the closing li for this particular list item, and inside of it I can create an additional sub-nested unordered list. So in this case, this will have its own list items inside of it, and we'll start listing different types of pears. So I'll say Asian Bartlett, Bosque, and Anjou. So I'm going to go ahead and save and refresh, and you can see that what happens there is, again, the browser indents to show that this is a sub-nested list within this list, and it's also, by default, it's given these hollow bullet points. Looks like an open circle there, as opposed to this one, which is filled in, all of which indicate that this is a sublist underneath pears here. Okay, let's talk briefly again about the terminology involved in nesting. So before we had talked about, whenever you have an opening and a closing tag, such as this UL element here, that anything that's inside of it, placed inside of or between the opening and closing tag, is known as nested. So these are elements which are nested within this larger UL tag. Some other ways we can describe this relationship is you could also say that these are children. All of these list items, and in this case also this unordered list, this sublist here, these are all children of this parent unordered list tag here. You could also say that this unordered list contains, the grandchildren of this parent unordered list here. You could also say that these are the children of this list item here for pairs. So again, grandchild to this parent UL, or you could say that these are the children of this parent, and these here are all descendants. You could say that these are all descendants of this parent here. Occasionally we do have the need to create ordered lists that do have a particular order. For example, numbered lists, and those are called ordered lists. Now, ordered lists are indicated using the OL element. So remember, UL for unordered list and OL for ordered list. And just in the same way, each one of these list items uses the LI tag to separate each individual list item. So if this were, for example, directions to get somewhere and they had to be in a particular order, I could use the OL tag as opposed to the UL tag. So we'll make some fake directions here. We'll just say take Highway 42. For example, and we could say something like, exit number 29. We'll say left at Mall Road. Turn right at Barn. These must be directions in the country. Okay. There we go. So let me go ahead and save and refresh that. And you'll see that this also creates an indented list, but instead of having bullet points like the unordered list, the OL tag or the ordered lists has numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay. So one of the nice things about this structure is if you leave something out, you don't have to go back and renumber or reorder these lists. For example, let's say I forgot to put in one of my directions here. Let's say that I forgot to make a particular turn from the exit ramp. I can just go in between there and add another list item, and we'll say turn left at ramp, like that. And we'll go ahead and save. And when I refresh, you'll see that it's automatically renumbered these for me, which is pretty nice. Using the LI and OL structure, we don't have to be concerned with numbering. We can swap these around in different orders, and it's going to go ahead and take care of the numbering for us. Last but not least, we have something called a definition list. Now, definition lists are sometimes common on frequently asked question pages of sites where you want to have a question and an answer. It's also particularly semantically for search engines. It's associated with a term and then a definition for that term. And that's key to why you would want to use this. So definition lists use the DL tag, DL for definition lists, and they're made up of two different parts. Instead of having list items inside, they have something called a DT, or a definition term. So I'm going to put my favorite childhood action character, Mr. T. And then each definition term is followed by a DD, or a definition. So and if we had a series of terms and definitions, you would simply alternate between a definition term and its particular definition again. So dt followed by dd. Okay. So if I go ahead and save and refresh, you can see what happens here is that each term is flush left, and then there's automatically the browser is creating indenting for each definition for that term. So it staggers between this, the term, and then the definition, followed by another term, and then another definition for that term.